Going from the adventures of serving in the Air Force to now helping others take their adventures in the travel industry, I welcome today Amber Kulesza. I probably mispronounced that. Please correct me, Amber.
It's Kulesza. It's okay. There's usually a lot more vowels in there, but it's all good.
Yes. I always I tell myself before I start a show, I'm like, I'm going to ask them how to pronounce their last name. And then I'm looking at your last name and I'm like, oh no, I did not do that correctly. But welcome everyone to the Stories of Service podcast, ordinary people who do extraordinary work. I am the host of the Stories of Service podcast, Teresa Carpenter. And as I always say, these conversations are meant to inspire, to motivate, and to bring other people's stories to light that you might not hear in every other podcast that you watch. And before we even get started with this podcast, as I always do, here is the intro from my dad, Charlie Pickard.
From the moment we're born and lock eyes with our parents, we are inspiring others. By showing up as a vessel of service, we not only help others, we help ourselves. Welcome to S.O.S, Stories of Service, hosted by Teresa Carpenter, here from ordinary people from all walks of life who have transformed their communities by performing extraordinary work.
And in this episode, we are sitting down with Amber, an Air Force disabled veteran and Chief Adventure Officer of AmbersAdventures LLC. And her story is one of resilience, transformation, and an unwavering passion for helping others. Today, we're going to talk about her life serving as a crew chief for the F-16 Fighting Falcon and A-10 Warthog, ensuring those incredible aircraft were always mission ready. She's also held roles as a postal manager and in cyber career fields, showcasing her diverse skill set and leadership across multiple domains. After that, we're going to talk about how she's navigated the VA system after transitioning out of the military. She became an expert at decoding the often confusing VA language and is now dedicated to helping other veterans across the benefits and resources access the benefits and resources they deserve. Also, through organizations like the Wounded Warrior Project, Operation Red Wings Foundation, and No Barriers, Amber found the support she needed to improve her physical and mental health as a disabled veteran. Her incredible journey from being able to ride just 1 mile on a recumbent bike to completing a 52 bike ride on a 2-wheel bike is a testament to her determination and the power of a supportive community. She's also a super auntie who treasures quality time with her nieces, nephews, and from building Legos to sharing donuts. Her happy place is scuba diving in Okinawa, Japan, and collecting sea glass along its beautiful beaches. Welcome again, Amber.
Thank you so much. So happy to see you and have some great time with you today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. So first off, as I always ask all my guests who have served in the military, where were you born and raised, and what inspired you from your childhood to join the U.S. Air Force?
So I grew up in the wonderful, beautiful Southern California with awesome breakfast burritos and street tacos. Honestly, I didn't think about the military as a kid. I grew up in a kind of a military town that had kind of gone away. But it wasn't really till my 20s. I had thought about it before, and I thought because when I was younger I had asthma that it disqualified me. But like many kids in the 80s, it was the Southern California smog that got it. But it was really at the prompting of a good friend and mentor of mine. He was stationed at Edwards Air Force Base in California, and his wife and I played football together. And I got to kind of just see that military community, right? That family, that just taking care of one another. And he said, the Air Force really needs NCOs like you. And I was like, what's an NCO and aren't I too old? So I said, I tried before. And he goes, I think you need to revisit that. And, so really I felt a tug. I was working and I really just felt a tug really to go in, but I was fighting internally with myself thinking I was too old. I don't like to run, all these things. But he just really encouraged me. So having that mentor to this day, he's family, and he's always been there throughout my career to say, hey, you can go A, B, or C. Here's the pros and cons. But to have somebody who believes in you at every stage in your life, he really just helped push me forward, just getting in.
How did you think that you weren't going to be able to do it, just because of the asthma and just feeling like you were out of shape?
Yeah, I was 20 when I started the process. I was 26. So knowing the Air Force, I had to be in by my 28th birthday. really just being older, right? I'm like, don't they take just kids 17, 18, you know? And he's like, no. And understanding the structure of guard and reserve and active duty. But I thought, well, I've had this life and, you know, I've lived a little bit and maybe they just won't take me. And so it actually took quite a bit of process because I had to go through extra exam. It actually took me 8 months to get waivers and
Wow.
approvals. And so I really had to want it. And so the funny part is I actually enlisted through San Antonio.
Interesting. So not even from California. What were you doing at the time work-wise? Like were you at a place in your life where like joining the military seemed like a good option?
You know, I was working at an architecture firm. I was making good money. I was also going to school for massage therapy because I really wanted to help people in that way. And I was just grinding it, right? In Southern California, being adulting and trying to make it work and really just waking up going, this is not what I want to do. Like there's
Mhm.
more out there. And I remember and I'm a woman of faith and remember having this internal conversation and God was like, if you just step out, I promise I will show you so much more than you already will. And I was like, Lord, I'm gonna take like a 2/3 pay cut. Like, you know, there's just a lot of things you think about. And I was like, I'm really not an early morning person, you know. So it was just there was a lot of conversations going on, and I'm very family orientated. And I felt as an older sibling, I would be abandoning my siblings. And I didn't
Mm.
want that. That was and you know, everybody, all my siblings were so supportive. They're like, we can't wait. We'll visit you. We'll
Mm.
send you care packages. And they're like, no, I mean, everybody was supportive. And that was really what helped me just go forward, having a community to say, hey, you know what? If that's what you feel called to do, then you need to try because in 20 years, are you going to still have a question about what if? Or you're at least you're going to get the answer if you try.
Absolutely. Wow, what a story. What an interesting story. I'm always fascinated by the people who join the military later on in life. I remember in boot camp, I had somebody that was in their late 20s. Her name was Molinaro. I'll never forget her. And she was like the mama bear of like all of us young girls, and it was really interesting having her perspective. I bet you were like that in your boot camp class too. You were sort of the older, more wise person in the group. Was that sort of the sense that you had when you went through?
It definitely was. They were like, "Grandma, what am I doing?" And I was like, "First of all, I just need you to tie your bootlaces correctly today so we don't get screamed at. If we can do
Mhm.
that, then let's make it to the next meal. And then after that, we'll just make it meal to meal." And they're like, "But I think I made a mistake." No, you didn't make a mistake. Like you can do this. Like so it was a lot of it kind of talking people down and honestly, like you say, that perspective of they're like, well, I don't know how to open a bank account. And I'm like, it's okay. Like, let's walk this through. Like
Mhm.
we can do this. So, I mean, just things that I had done already that to me were second nature, that it was their first time away. And for me, I was like, okay, you know, I mean, it was my first huge time gone from my family, but I had traveled a little bit before.
Right, right. So you're in the Air Force, and crew chief is that that's a maintainer
It's
field.
aircraft maintainer. Yeah.
Aircraft maintainer, and I was an aircraft maintainer myself. I was an aviation electrician's mate. So those are not common ratings, especially I think back when I joined in '96, there were not very many women who decided to go maintainer. And you were probably in that same category when you enlisted. What was that decision like, and why did you decide to become a maintainer?
So growing up, my family doesn't matter boy or girl. There was three things my parents said: you're going to know how to cook a few meals, you're
Mhm.
going to know how to wash your clothes, and you're going to know how to do oil changes and basic things on your car. So for us, we it was a family project. We grew up doing classic cars and things. And so it was something I loved. And I was like, well, if I'm going to do the military, right? You want to do the cool factor,
The
but
tough thing. Yeah, the
the
harder
tough
thing.
thing. But if I know, you know, if I could have done it a little bit different, I'm like, wait, we all get paid the same? Hold on. Wait a minute.
Totally true, right? You don't think
Wait,
about those things when
no.
you're a kid though. You're like, "Oh, I wanna do the most
Yeah.
badass job."
And it sounds great, right? The cool factor's great. My
Right.
parents were excited. You know, I'm in front of an F-16 jet, you know. So it was really, really great. And you're like, I'm working 12 hours. I'm working 14 hours. I'm working weekends. I'm in
Yep.
snowstorms. I was like, but
Yeah.
my friends get a lunch break.
Right.
So it wasn't, but I really wanted to do something that made a difference. And, you don't have to be quote unquote boots on the ground or a door kicker, right? I know that if I'm in charge of my aircraft, right? As an E1, E2, E3, you're a junior enlisted service member in charge of a $26 million aircraft. I mean, if we think about that, that's a lot of responsibility.
Oh, I know. I mean, that was something that was really entrusted into me too, or ingrained into us maintainers, was how much those pilots and the NFOs, naval flight officers, depended on us. Because if we did something wrong, or if we messed up some kind of a maintenance problem, I mean, that's somebody's life that is on the line. I really took that seriously.
And I really took that seriously. And for us in the Air Force, even though you have specialists for engines and avionics, like at the end of the day, it's still you who signs it off. Who says, hey, this is a federal document I am signing that saying this jet is good to go. So I really did take that into account, because I never wanted to look at the families of those people and know that I made a mistake that should have been corrected, that affected their family. And so for me, that's what I really took to heart.
Absolutely. And then how long did you serve in the Air Force total?
So I did 12 years between active duty and the reserves.
Okay. And then how many years were active? How many reserve?
A split. I did a 6-6 split.
Nice. Was there ever a thought while you were going through your active duty time that you were like, oh, I could make this to 20, I could get that pension? Or were you kind of like at the 6-year mark where you kind of like, okay, I've done enough, it's time to go?
No, I loved my time active duty. Honestly, I spent a majority of it, 5 years of it, overseas. I think if things were different and I would have been able to stay overseas, I think I would have been longer. But I wanted to be a first sergeant, right? I always wanted to take care of people. But the thing was, at the time, there's very few times in your military life where you get to decide what you want for your personal and professional life. And at the time, my grandmother was ailing. I had already lost my grandfather, my papa, while I was overseas in Japan. So it took 5 days for me to get home, to get back to my family. When he passed, now she was ailing. And it was one of those moments where you say, I've been away from my family for 6 years, right? What is my next step? What do I want? And at the time, I wanted to be here for my family, to take care of her and them, but still also serve. So at the time, with the way my career was going and where I wanted to be versus where I could be, versus the needs of the Air Force, I decided that going to reserve and going into vehicle maintenance was a better pathway where I can kind of wear both of those hats and still feel like helping the family and helping, our country.
Gotcha. So where did you wind up once you left overseas active duty time and started your reserve time?
So funny enough, active duty time, I was at Davis Monthan in Arizona. I moved back to Southern California to be near family, but every month I traveled to Luke Air Force Base in Arizona. So I would do a 12-hour trip every weekend, because
whoa,
yeah, it was, and I did that for almost 5 years, because that was the closest base that had an opening to a similar career field that I wanted. So
gotcha.
That's how much I still wanted to be in desert.
That's amazing. And even Tab, she's watching this, and I think this is when you were talking about making those choices between family and service. And she said, "Oh, you're making me tear up."
I love Tab.
She's wonderful, absolutely a wonderful person, and she's also a former S.O.S guest. May one day be a returning guest, actually. But I think that it's so tough, because as I'm in my transition journey, and it's like this feeling that I'm leaving behind something that's all I ever know, and what I love in terms of the camaraderie. And there was always like something exciting to look forward to next. But then now my life has just taken such an interesting turn. I never expected to be podcasting for 4 years and continue to do this, and to be able to use the skills as a communicator to give back in another way. How did you craft your life after that as a reservist with those 6 years? And did you start to go down a journey of, okay, I'm going to someday be a small business owner, or were you focused on just work and family, or tell me a little bit more about that?
I tell people I did my transition horribly, honestly. Because I was like, I'm a grown woman. I can do this. I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing
I'm gonna
here.
put you on full screen real quick so you can talk a little more. Go ahead.
And so for me, the challenge was when I got off of active duty, I was getting out in Arizona. So when I went through my first TAPS class, they told me, well, you're moving back to California. We don't have anything for you. And you're like, wait a minute. We all know there are lots of national programs. So even though I was required to go to TAPS class, they didn't have anything for me there. And so that was really difficult. And then coming back home, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't understand about transition. Everywhere I turned for a lot of the services back in Southern California, I was told I didn't qualify, right? I wasn't homeless. I wasn't this. I wasn't that. So there was a lot of metrics that I did not meet because I had already had a partial degree and was somewhat educated with higher learning. They're like, well, you don't need our help. We can't help you. You don't need it. So I had a hard time articulating my skills, knowing that I could use the vet center. I also didn't feel like I was broke enough to use the VA. I thought I was taking away from my battle buddies. And
Mm,
I thought I was whining about it, right? Like, well, but did you die? Right? That was the
right.
bar we had kind of set. So it took me a couple of years finally where my back was enough. I was like, enough was enough. And I finally went to reach out. And I don't even remember how, but I think I finally called the VA or went in. And Long Beach, California has such a large VA, can be very daunting. But I think I finally went in and I said, I need help. And
Mm,
then kind of started that process. And then, like a knucklehead, I did my first VA claim by myself and miserably
wow.
failed. So,
Interesting. So, yeah, I think that a lot of veterans do that. They think that they have to go through this process by themselves. They think that they have to transition alone, or they compare themselves to other veterans who are
yeah.
transitioning and say, "Oh, I'm not that bad. I don't need those services."
Mhm.
Instead of understanding that these, as Paul Lawrence was on my podcast
Yeah,
and said in his, book, Veteran Benefits for You,
I love his book. Yes.
his book is amazing. He's like, "These are the benefits that we earned. These are
Nice.
the benefits that are available, and you're not taking away by
Mhm.
filing for those benefits. You're seeing what your options are, and you're seeing what is available to you." And
Right.
so tell me a little bit about what it was like when you first decided to go back into the VA vet center, because it says you said you did your claim yourself, and you didn't get help. There's a VSO on our base, by the way,
Right.
literally across the parking lot at the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, and I didn't even know. I went in there this week and I did my intent to file. I had no idea. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know. So that buys me time if I don't do a BDD. I think I'm gonna wind up doing the BDD, but I wanted
please
to make
do.
just to
Please
put the
do.
intent. Oh, yeah. But
Yeah.
but but the intent to file is great because you get that 1-year grace period. If you don't wanna file right away, you can delay it, and then it'll backdate it from the year that from what if you do it within that year that you get out, they backdate it
Mhm.
to your last day of service. So, I thought that was interesting, but why did you initially not get help with your claim?
Being a maintainer, right? There's two things, and not just a maintainer, but I think a military service member. The two major things that our bar set are: is it going to at the end of the day, is it going to affect somebody's life, or is it going to affect property? And those are our markers. And I think, unfortunately, we carry that. And if it's like, well, I didn't die today. Okay, I'm good enough,
Right.
right? I didn't go through this. I didn't lose a limb. I didn't develop this, or I didn't deploy, or I didn't TDY. And we do all these comparatives,
We
and
do.
we are not encouraged, instead of saying, and I like to educate people and tell them, when the day you go to MEPS, that money is already set aside for you. Period. It is already set aside. And people are like, wait a minute. I said, it's not like there's a pot and when you take out, it takes from somebody else. I think that is the biggest things that people don't realize. And so too with the VA language, I tell people when we go into service, we don't know what an NCO is, right? We don't know what all the job titles are. We don't know what DTS is and travel
Sure.
and all these things. So why should it be any different for the VA?
Right.
The VA speaks in their own language. And unfortunately, it is not the same language that we speak in the military. There's some overlap, but when somebody is asked a question, it is how is that question asked? How is it written down? And what is the intent behind that question? Because those
Correct.
are all three really different things. It is, how are you doing today? I'm okay. What's your pain scale like? I'm at a 3. But what about yesterday when I was in at 8? And it took
Yeah.
me 5 minutes to stretch, to get out of bed. What is my normal? So these are the things where people don't understand. It's like, again, it's about our quality of life. And because it has not been our priority about quality of life in the military, it is such a different reframe when we come out. So we don't understand we even have that option.
Right.
And so that's where for me it was doing it the first time, not understanding, hey, I got back issues. Okay. What I didn't know was, do you have upper, middle, or lower? Is it bilateral? Is it left? Is it right? And those make a huge difference when it comes to filing your VA claim.
So you went to your physicals, though. You had your separation physical. And when you were doing those, did you just not go into detail on what was the things that were impacting you?
Sometimes. I mean, I'd gone to physical therapy a little bit, but I always wanted to make sure I was fully worldwide qualified.
Sure.
Because for me, if I wasn't, then that means somebody else has to take my spot.
Right. I was the same way.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm good enough. And
But I'm
so
saying at the separation physical, though, where you're supposed to just tell them everything that has impacted you, you
I
still kind
did
of held
not
back?
I did not have a separation physical. I yeah, there's a lot of things I found out I should have had, I didn't.
Hmm.
There were some things, especially being maintenance, that did not flow through. And I tell people, and it's kind of hard to explain, but sometimes maintenance is a different beast than the rest of the military. And so unfortunately that did not happen. So I think a lot what should have happened was like, hey, you good? Yep, cool. Check, check, check. Make sure you turn in your gear. Make sure you don't owe us anything on your government travel card.
Oh, I see. You weren't really told, like I was told, okay, you're at your separation physical, every single thing that you intend to claim for are all things that need to be listed. And then that way I understand, like, these are the things I'm going to apply for. These are the things that are and are ongoing issues. And these are the things that, I'm fine, I'm not don't have
Yeah.
any issues with at the moment, but I just want to have documented in case they come back. So I think that that's probably been so different than when you did your filing, because I felt pretty educated about this process as I'm going through it. I do feel like I have what I need, but I don't think everybody feels that way, even
No,
now.
definitely not. And we all know different career fields, different different organizations, different squads, different tempos, different timelines all have an impact on that. That was not relayed to me. So that's why I press upon people so much to start transitioning early, 2 years out, 3 years out, even if
That's
you're
what I
on a
did.
list, just
Mhm.
start educating yourself because you start learning to ask the questions you don't know yet. And so
Correct.
you start pulling that thread a little bit and you're like, oh, wait a minute, is this going to lead to A, B, C, and D? And so that's why arming people with the knowledge to start understanding the questions to ask can really lead you to be successful as you go through the transition. You're less stressful. You understand the resources, organizations, or even just where to reach out. Because once you're out of the military, you're out, right?
Right.
You're done. I mean, they have a priority and you are no longer it.
Yeah, absolutely. So did you appeal your determination, or how did you work through that process?
So I think after the first time I started kind of talking with a few people, I think I got a VSO. So the first time I did it, I think I let it go for a little bit. Like, hey, I'm getting care a little bit, but
Mhm.
I'm trying to find a steady job. a steady job that can kind of work with my disabilities, but also pay my rent. And so, like many people who get out, it's can I have a job so I can put a roof over my head and food in my mouth? And that's the priority. And if I can get a little bit of VA service, great. But then I didn't also know that they also look at your income. So even though they were service connected, I was still getting charged for certain things because not everything is covered when you're not 100%.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay. So you're going along and you're getting some services you're having to pay out of pocket. What did you do next? How does that work when you want to adjust where your disability percentage is? How did you work through that?
Yeah, I think I started getting better about articulating it in those appointments. So I was like, oh, I can talk about this stuff now. Like I
Mm.
was like, I'm not deploying anymore, right? Like,
Right.
but it was funny because I was in the reserve. So I'm seeing the VA for certain things, but I'm still in the reserve. I still want to be worldwide qualified. But I had to address things. I had to have a second knee surgery, and articulate, hey, this is because of service and things like that. So still kind of walking a fine line, because I didn't want to. I thought it would be a bad thing to be med boarded,
Right.
um, and because I never wanted to get out of service.
Right.
And at 12 years, I still wanted to. I had to make that decision because after a second knee surgery, basically, the Air Force had a big problem with me not running. My orthopedic surgeon said, you will never run again and never should you, due to my injuries. I could do push-ups, I could do sit-ups like a champ, 60, 60 each, knock those out, but found that it was a deterrent. So I was not getting promoted, right? I would not get those education opportunities and those training opportunities. So at that point, I just had to decide what was best overall for my life, because at the end of the day, not one person in the Air Force is going to come back and pay my rent if I can't work. So I had to really like have that tough conversation with myself to go, what am I sacrificing my body and my health for?
Right.
Because again, these people are not going to show up to take care of
No.
me when I
No.
have my neck surgery.
No.
So like,
You know, Scott Mann has a book called Nobody's Coming, and that thing like stays in my mind. And it's not so much that like there isn't anybody there,
right,
but at the end of the day, you have to take care of yourself.
right.
And you have to figure things out sometimes, even when you have no help. I often triage my help
Yes.
where I will literally ask like 3 people at the same time with the hopes that like maybe one person will get back to me on something. And then if nobody does, I just keep on plowing through in the, haphazard or awkward way that I get something done, because you've got to just figure it out. Sometimes. And I think it's like that with our with our VA claims as well. We're not going to be experts on all things VA. Even the first time we file, we might not get everything that we think we deserve, or we might miss some things, or we don't necessarily know about everything that's available. But I think we all have to do our part to educate one another and have conversations like this one, and do what we can to be prepared to navigate that stage of our lives. It's
Right.
very important.
And I think what was important though too is, especially doing that first claim, I didn't get right. I didn't think I was bad off to get 100%. I am currently a 100% service connected disabled veteran. But I didn't realize, I thought it was just my back. I didn't realize how it connected, and then my hips and my legs and my neck. And we don't think that. So once you start having these conversations, these realizations, you're like, well, wait a minute, is my neck pain causing my headaches and my earaches? Is it my sinuses because I've been overseas and I've inhaled something,
Right,
different
right.
chemicals, right? So those are things we have all lived with, and the people around us have lived with them, but that's not the standard norm for
Yeah.
a civilian. It is your norm. And once you start getting out of that group kind of a little bit and expanding, you're like, oh, that wasn't a part of your service? You don't have dermatitis issues from being in the sandbox? Like, I thought everybody had it. Well,
Right.
everybody may have it who you've been with, but you shouldn't have those issues. And again, it goes to your quality of life, because what I think people just don't understand is the service-connected disability is just something that happened during your
While your
service
service.
or
Yes.
aggravated. So
Yeah.
like I came in, I had already had one knee injury. The Air Force accepted me with my knee injury because it had been redone. So, but because of my service, it aggravated. So
Right.
that's where they're like, okay. So again, people are like, oh, I didn't know that. And so I think that's where sometimes the information where people feel bad and they're like, well, I'm not really disabled. And I'm like,
Well,
well,
and
let's
I
correct
wish
these
there
things.
was another word for it, Amber. I wish the word
Yeah,
wasn't disabled. I wish it was something like medical issues as the
right.
result of serving in the military, ongoing medical issues that were either exasperated or caused by your service or by the time that you served. And the thing is that this counts for even things that happened off duty, as far as I'm understanding. It's really anything that has happened while you served in the military. And what this enables you to do, especially if you're not a retiree, is receive veterans care, not just the disability payments, which I'll be honest with you. How do you, as a person who's in this space, how do you differentiate between the people who need the services and then the people who just collect as much as they can because they know they can? I mean, that's the only part that I struggle with, Amber, is the fact that there are things that I know I definitely have because of the service or was exasperated by the service, but there's things too that I think are just so minor that I think that TRICARE will take care of it, and I don't necessarily feel like I'm ethically going to do that. And do you think that the check, the money, plays a factor in making it so that it doesn't always seem honest to everyone? Does that make sense what I'm trying to ask?
No, definitely. A lot of people say, oh, well, somebody's gaming the system, right? We all hear about somebody gaming the system. And I
Right.
go, at the end of the day, you're going to have the 1 or 2% people. But here's the
Right.
thing, it's not so much about the money. But I tell people this, when everybody gets out, right? Most people are told, hey, you're going to be PMP, go for that, right? You're this rank, you're going to have your PMP, go do that. You're going to be a supervisor, or, you are in this branch of service, or, hey, IT's the real deal. You need to be making 70 or $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
No, because you know what $100,000 is? That's $100,000 worth of problems and headaches and responsibilities. So, and also too, right now, let's say somebody gets out and they're 30, right? They're doing great. Maybe they're 38, maybe they're 40, you're retired. Guess what? In 5 years, because when you hit over 40, right, and I hit over that, like there's a lot that just starts eking in
Yeah,
a little bit.
a lot of health problems, a lot of
What
issues.
health problems, and the thing is, what we think is not affecting us, go ask your spouse, go ask your kids, go ask your family and friends. They see what's affecting you. So what I noticed about me was I was staying home more, and you know me, I'm all over the place. um so I noticed, because of my physical disabilities, I was not going out because it hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I was not getting up and doing the grocery shopping that I needed to because it hurt. So those things like that, when you have those social circles, or even not a big one, but just a couple people to say, hey, that check-in. So the money is not so much, it's great. It can be very helpful, because maybe if you take a 25-hour job, right, making $50,000, and knowing that you have your VA disability benefits that are tax-free, maybe that compensation together
Right.
can help you improve your quality of life, because you're going to physical therapy. You don't feel like you have to do a 40-hour job to make the same check, which means
Mm-hmm.
you're just going to work and you're not going to take care of your disabilities. So I tell people it's a quality of life thing. Okay. And again, it can be helpful, especially when you're going in between things and you're trying to take care of your mental health and your physical health, and you realize that they overlap instead of, they're not siloed, they overlap whether you want them to be or not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and really, it's about the quality of life that you want for the rest of your life. And even though you talked about minor things that you don't want to put down, but here's the thing, at the end of the day, anybody who is married, wants to get married, might get married, whatever, your partner at spouse, at the end of the day, when you pass away from a service connected disability, right, your spouse is still eligible to receive 50%
Hmm.
of your
That's
disability.
something to
So
think about. Yeah.
it is something to think about, because it's like we're always about taking care of people, no matter where we
Mm-hmm.
are at in life. And I've seen it where people who have been prideful or didn't feel like they deserved it, or because they made it home alive from Vietnam, they said, no, I'm not going to go do my claim. And I've seen their spouses suffer because that person passed away, but yet this person doesn't have any benefits. They don't have access to that resources because that person, that
I
veteran,
never thought about that. Yeah.
So that's where, for me, I go, let's think about context, especially the single guy. Let's call them out, the single guys, right? The single people, I don't have, this. I go, maybe one day somebody will take you. I don't know. But I go, that at the end of the day, right? I want to show up for my nieces and nephews, right? So
Sure.
those little things, right? My feet hurt. I get my orthotics and my shoes taken care of from the VA. Why? That means we can go to Legoland. I could do my beach walks, right? My mental health is improved. So for the things that I thought were little, I noticed how much those little things affected me. And it may not be every day, but it's like, well, wait a minute, how does it affect my overall health? And how is my overall health, affecting my family, my friends, or the things that I want to do?
I love that. Thank you, Amber. That's a really good way to look at it. And the other point that I also want to bring up is that we are in the military. We're the 1% that have decided to raise our right hands. Many of us didn't know what we were signing up for. We didn't know if we would be in harm's way or not. And I think there's something to be said for every single person who makes that decision. And I think that the nation does owe some sort of a somewhat gratitude. I do believe that the VA system and the benefits that we get is a way of showing gratitude for the people that have decided to take on this duty. And I think there's nothing wrong with saying that.
No, not at all. And I think some people who are maybe just uninformed look at, oh, you just want to get the pay. Look, man, no, I don't want to get the pay. I've even gone back to add things to my service-connected disability because without that, I wouldn't be able to do some of the programs, some of the health and wellness programs. So people look at me, they're like, well, you have all your limbs. Uh-huh. Not having my limbs or not you physically see me not walking with a cane or anything. You don't see when I limp. I try very hard to hide it when there's days where, we don't have to have a physical, visible thing to somebody else, right? Because I'm hoping I'm having a good day, right? But you know what, though? If I park in my disability parking spot because I need it that day, because I'm going to Costco and this is my 5th trip, but guess what I did today? I went out, I went and grocery shopped. Hey, if I needed new clothes, I took care of that. If I'm taking care of my needs and my health and wellness needs, then guess what? I got out today. I didn't self-isolate, right? I took a shower today. I got outside. And some people, those are those basic needs that they're still struggling with. So you know what? If I need the disability parking today, I'm going to use it. If I don't, I don't. And so, because people ask me, they're like, well, why do you have a DV plate? I was like, because sometimes I need it. And that's okay. I had to get over some of the side eyes. And you know what? I just had to learn. I was like, you don't live in my body. You don't know the struggles. You're not one of the 3 people I've called at 2 a.m. to say, man, I woke up and my back is seized, right? You're not part of my tribe who has had to help me through this journey to get to this point, because it hasn't always looked like that. And and a lot of it was just getting over the ask, because we have a really hard time. We feel like we're being a burden. And I tell people, I'm like, trust me, I'll get texts at 12 o'clock at night. They're like, hey, I know you're awake. I'm like, yeah, what's going on? It only gets me, like I said, it's usually the East Coast is pretty good. It's only when I go to the West Coast that it gets really early. So.
That's amazing. Amber, I appreciate that. You're not just helping, I'm sure you're helping so much of our audience, but you're just helping me personally, because it is definitely a different stage in life when you've decided that you aren't going to hide any of your medical issues and you're going to make medical appointments and do all these things that you haven't done. Like I'm getting treated for allergies right now. I'm getting treated. I mean, like these little things. Like I have this thing where my face now goes red right here at night when I'm tired or whatever. So I think that's probably going to be one of my upcoming appointments, is to kind of maybe go see a dermatologist and see if there's anything I can do about that. I mean, these are like, to me, these are just so minor things that I've just lived with all my life. But like you said, why not get it looked at? Why not allow some care to come in? There's nothing wrong with that. And speaking of service, I want to transition too to what you're also doing now, besides being a disability advocate for those who are transitioning and going through this process. But you also do a lot of disability travel. Tell me a little bit about how that got started for you.
Well, it really started with my great friend Jennifer Burks. It was after COVID. So I moved when I got out of service. I left Air Force Reserve, and the next month I moved 3,000 miles away from Southern California to Florida. And this is before COVID, right? About 6 months before COVID, and before, webinars and us connecting, on Zoom. Nobody knew who Zoom was back then. No interviews happening, right? None of this stuff.
No.
So I had to make a choice. I had to take a leap and go, well, if I want to be in Florida, because I wanted a higher quality life and a lower cost of living.
Yep.
And so if you don't change and you say, I want, but you're not willing to change to make things happen, then you're going to stay in the same place. So I had to take that leap of faith, because I had gotten some calls for some great jobs, but they said, oh, but you're not here to interview. And I was like, wonderful. So I came out here and said, hey, I know what I have in my savings. I know I have in my finances, but doing it. And the thing was, I'd moved how many times with the military? So moving to a new place wasn't, they're like, oh, isn't it scary? And I'm like, I moved to Japan. Like, I'm okay. Like, this is stateside. So, but it was a leap of faith. But just doing that put me out of my comfort zone of family, right? Going, hey, they're really kind of going, what do I want next for me? And so, what I learned was, I kind of finally came to my time where I couldn't separate my mental and physical health as much as I wanted to. I was like, no, I'm fine, right? I'm going to stuff it in that Jack in the Box that we like to put it all in. And, one day I moved to Florida, and I couldn't find a job. I wasn't getting interviews. I'm worried about finances. Hey, I'm trying to get the house in order. And so everything just kind of came up, and I reached out to One Warrior Project. And I said, I'm struggling. And I'm asking for help. And this is really big because I don't ask for help. I was like, people ask me for help. I don't ask for people to help. And I said, I don't want my family to know I'm struggling because I don't want them to worry about me. And a lot of us do that. And so again, with the big change, and they were really amazing to assist me. But with that, I also learned more about the VA process, but with the journey of Amber's Adventures, it really happened because after COVID, I had not seen my family in 3 years. And I was like, okay, screw it. Let's go. So I was like, I'm going to take a cross country trip. And in between that COVID time, we had done this, right? We had made internet friends, right? Not AOL internet friends, but real internet friends, and we built those relationships. But people were still, especially transitioning, people were like, but are they real people? When people say, hey, reach out if we can assist. Let me know if I can do if you want to do a coffee chat, or if you want a referral, reach out. Let's have a conversation about that position you're interested in. So Jennifer Burke said, hey, we got a hashtag. So she created the AmbersAdventures hashtag. She's like, so as you go meet people, highlight it so we can all follow you, because not everybody could travel, right? There was, everybody still got health issues and different things. So I was stopping to meet the people I'd built relationships with during COVID, and showing and sharing with our community, these are real people. These people are showing up. I'm staying at somebody's house, right?
Wow. Huh.
So I did that across country. Nadia Newkirk was one of the first people I got to see and hang out with, and her family was amazing. I mean, she even made me a little care package, of comfy socks, and made sure that, that there was a space so I could roll out my yoga mat and make sure I was stretching in between the trips. Like, just having people show up. And so by seeing that, our community could be like, well, wait a minute. Okay, so this is actually like real. Like, these people are really showing up. And so every step of the way, I'd be like, hey, I'm going to visit my family in San Antonio. If you have time for coffee, I'm going to be at this place.
Where were you sharing this? All on LinkedIn?
I was all on LinkedIn. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
This was LinkedIn. So just kind of hashtag and figuring out hashtags. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Um, it was just really, really odd. And so just across the way, so it'd be like, Amber, where to next? Where to next? I hit Arizona.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So you're hitting, the funny part was my family, and I use family loosely because as a military person, we acquire family and family support throughout countries and states. And it's really funny. Even one of my siblings was like, do you have a state where you don't know anybody? And I was like, maybe, but I could probably find a friend of a friend. So, hitting these spots and knowing that, people wanted to come out and hang out and see me. Somebody drove 45 minutes. Yeah, to come see me,
Wow.
have coffee. That really meant a lot. But it was just a way for us to connect, and I think show that LinkedIn was more than just saying, just
I
saying,
want a
"Oh,
job
yeah,
or
just
yeah.
a job." These are real people, and especially we're so wary as transitioning service members and even veterans and mil spouses and family support. It's like, well, you're putting these great things up, but at the end of the day, can I reach out for a coffee chat? What is an information interview? Are you going to really make time for me? Are you really going to do a referral? And honestly, this community is amazing because
It is.
I
It
said,
is.
yeah, and I tell people all the time, I was like, I'm telling you, if you just ask me, I said, don't blast me with a pitch, don't send me your resume, like,
Right.
but let me know where you're coming from. Hey, I'm a transitioning service member. Or hey, I'm a mill spouse, just getting back into the workforce. I would love to know, do you have 15 minutes for a coffee chat?
I mean,
Absolutely.
Amber, I built my whole podcast on LinkedIn. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a few, I mean, people that have come to me through Facebook and Instagram, but it is primarily because of LinkedIn. And it's just because it's so easy to connect with people and have some of these more meaningful discussions. I can approach hard issues on
Yes.
LinkedIn. There's just so much more that I could do. And it's a wonderful feeling
Yes.
to meet the people that you've only communicated with online. I mean, I can't even begin to explain what it was like to be at like the military influencer conference and to see all these previous podcast guests that
Yes.
I'd only met through LinkedIn or talked to back and forth on
Yeah.
emails. And then the other thing is, I have people who send me care packages, who
Love
who
it.
send me books, and
Mhm.
some people will say, "Oh gosh, they just want to come to you when they're promoting a book," but these are like everyday
Yeah.
day-to-day people, ordinary people who have a story and they
Mhm.
put out a book. And I always see it as such a privilege to look at their book and to read their story. And then some of them like really go out of their way to package it all nice, and
Yes.
they'll wrap it in tissue paper and put some
Yes.
business cards in there and put like a real very personalized
Mhm.
inscription on the inside. And I just think, wow, that's so thoughtful. And people are so kind. And when you focus on that, when you really look at that side, or this whole wonderful experience I had with the SecDef advocacy, I mean, the biggest takeaway from all that was the amazing people that I met. And I would have never had that opportunity if I didn't have an online presence.
Right.
It just wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have met those people. They wouldn't have invited me out there. And it was such an incredible experience. And so I can definitely relate to what you're talking about.
Yeah, it has been amazing to see that. And as you saw from the mic, I'm a hugger. I'm like, hey, hey,
Oh, it was
which is,
so wonderful meeting you.
it was so much fun. But like, and people are like, oh, I don't know. And I tell people, I said, anytime you want to go to a conference or a day thing or network, I was like, grab a battle buddy, because then you two can be awkward together, right? Like,
Right.
it's okay. Like, we have all felt that, walked in knowing you're
Mhm.
like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. Do I have the right shoes in? Trust me, there's many days I've walked into these hiring fairs or job events and I'm like, do I have the right shoes on? Is somebody going to say something about the shoes?
Oh yeah.
Or like, and especially as a woman, because like trying to find comfortable shoes for these days. I just tell
Oh,
people,
I know.
like, you saw me at the MIC, I was running around in tennis shoes. Like, I go, I've learned at these conferences, I need to be in tennis shoes. Why? Because of my back injuries, because of my legs. If I want to be out here longer to engage with people, I'm going to be in my comfy tennies. And at the end of the day, nobody is worried about my
No one
shoes.
cares. Nobody
Right. No,
cares. But
no.
I understand how you feel, like, especially because when we were doing all this stuff we went to a Senate confirmation hearing and we
Yes.
did a press conference, and I'm like, I don't even have like a blazer. Like I don't wear those kind of outfits. But when people go on like Fox News or Newsmax or some of these, very, very, national outlets, they
Right.
tend to dress up and look very businesslike and professional and polished, and I think sometimes we as women especially, we put, because looks are so sadly
Mhm.
more emphasized, I think, for a woman than a man, and we put so much pressure on ourselves to look perfect and to be this perfectly polished person, but nobody is this perfectly polished person
No.
at the end of the day.
No, we are so hard on ourselves, and I think that's what one of the things I've learned through this journey, through my transition, but really that post-service transition is you have to lean back into your tribe, and you have to build one. And
You
people are like,
do.
"Well, I'm an introvert." I was like, "Do you know most of us have that introvertedness?" Like,
Everybody does. Everybody says they're an introvert.
like,
And I'm
yeah,
like, no, you guys aren't all introverts. You just don't really feel comfortable socializing with people that you don't know and you don't want to be vulnerable around. I mean, I
right.
get it. Like, I like being alone too, a lot.
Yeah. Oh,
But
me too.
but
Like,
I mean, I won't lie, I do, but I need social and face-to-face time. It's one of the reasons why I'm seeing a personal trainer now. I mean, yes, I love it because it gets me in shape, but the biggest reason is because it's more like a social time. It's a time for me to talk to a like-minded person for an hour, 3 times a week, and it's an amazing outlet. And I think we all need those things. Like you said, we
we
need
do.
routine communication, routine interaction with a particular tribe.
I think so, because we get in our own head, right? Especially when our disabilities are affecting us, right? When
Mhm.
your back hurts, that's all that your
All you
headspace.
think about.
My
Yep.
back, my back. Okay. So, again, one of the biggest supporters who I love is my sister Leslie Coffey. At ACP, part of my tribe, but it's really funny when I was really trying to gauge and figure out what was going on. And I said one day, and I said, you know what, sis, I'm having kind of a funky day. My head's off. I don't know what's going on. And she said, let's walk it back a little bit. And I said, okay. She goes, you just got off a plane 2 days ago. You had a nighttime event, which was people-y. You didn't get enough recovery time, and you haven't hit the beach yet. And I go, oh, so when you have somebody and you have people who kind of understand your perspective and what you need, she's like, and I go, yeah, but I've got A, B, C, D, E, and F today. And she goes, okay, but what is the priority? If you don't take care of your mental headspace today, can you focus on those things?
Right.
Absolutely can't. She's like, go take a little time, have your coffee. I was like, of course. And so grab your coffee, go take a walk on the beach, go play with JCat for a little bit, and then revisit this. And so having people around you, but one, I had to learn to say, I'm not okay. And it doesn't mean
Mhm.
I'm going to do something grave, right? That doesn't, I think that's the context, right? We as service member go from A to Z real quick. And I think, service members, military spouses, that's how our lives have kind of been. And so it's not that, it's finding that medium gauge to go, not having a great day, don't know what it's about. Maybe I need some more outside. I need the sun to recharge. If I'm into two side, my brain goes
Mhm.
all.
And there's studies about that. I've actually been doing some research
Yes.
with Andrew Huberman had a show with Sean Ryan about sunlight and about
Yes.
how much we need day-to-day sunlight.
And different times of day have a different frequency. So if you're optimal in the evening, right, it's kind of knowing like our optimal productive.
Yeah, mine's in the morning.
Mine
As
is at
anybody who gets my early morning texts that are like this long, they know.
yeah, I'm like, I can do the mornings if it's scuba diving and fishing and early bike riding, I can do it, but I'm not optimal. So I've had to learn to kind of change how I engage, what I want for myself, and change those times where I know where is best for me, but also how I engage with other people. Like 6 a.m. is not the greatest time for me to
Sure.
engage with people, but like I said, sometimes when somebody's in Okinawa or Korea, like made those allowances. So.
Yeah, of course. So tell me a little bit about where you envision taking the business forward as we're winding up the call. Like where are you going next?
Yeah. Well, travel wise, I'm going to Japan next.
Yay.
So super excited to do that with family. My little brother and I will be going and just super excited to kind of share that with him because since I was overseas most of the time, my brother didn't get to experience that, or most of my family didn't. So that's really nice. But really, Amber's Adventures just going forth and trying to partner with more organizations to make the awareness about the VA language, how to talk, because it's not just about getting your claim, right? It's not like you get your service claim and everything's all unicorns and rainbows. It's we need to talk to the VA to get for our health and wellness, right? How do you get acupuncture? How do you get chiropractic? How do you get shoes? How do you get orthotics? How do I get aquatic PT? Because it helps me more than maybe standard PT, right? It's less stress on your other disabilities. So knowing the language on how to ask that. So sharing presentations like that and really helping more people understand the accommodations and the accessibility of travel. I mean, we all know most of us coming out of service are going to have back issues. And I hear time and time again, but Amber, I'm really afraid to get on a plane because of the jostling, because of the stress, because of the mental health, getting from, the parking to drop the curb off and then, my luggage. And so for me, that's why it's so important to share these services like TSA cares and going, hey, somebody can literally walk you from the curb all the way to your gate and beyond if you need to. And part of that is helping people feel comfortable so they can use the resources. The resources are great, but if you always think it's for somebody else and you don't know how to ask for that, or you feel like, do I have to re explain and re traumatize myself because I've got to explain to the person at the ticket
Mhm.
counter why I need help getting on the plane? That's a lot of it, and people just get that mental fatigue of going, I don't want to explain it again. I don't want to have to validate my
Mhm.
injuries to you. So for me, I really want to bring that together with some more lunch and learns and presentations and helping organizations, throughout the US really understand that so we can get to the people, we can get to the families. And really, it's not just the veteran disability travel. It's we all know that military spouses and caretakers and dependents are the ones who bring this information back to the veteran. Because maybe when you're coming out of service, you're not ready to hear this, or
Mhm.
your priority is getting a job and you're like, oh, I didn't know I could do this. I want them to not self select out. Because I have not self selected out, I've been able to go whitewater rafting as a disabled veteran, right? I've been able to ride 52 miles with the help of Wounded Warrior Project as a disabled veteran. I got to play with dolphins a couple weeks ago, right? Like, I mean, so these things, if I'm always thinking about, well, somebody else deserves it, somebody else deserves it, somebody else is worse off. Being a disabled veteran, right? A service connected disabled veteran is just saying that the VA validated your disability to give you monetary compensation. It
Right.
doesn't mean you're not living with that injury and that disability. And there's nothing wrong with having that disability because if you now know how to address it, then you know how to get the services. Then you know how to improve your quality of life. And I really just want people to get over the ask or get through the ask and understand that it's okay to step out and say, I need some assistance.
It is. Absolutely. Well, it has been such a pleasure having you on, Amber. I really enjoyed this conversation. And I think that you're going to continue to help and inspire quite a bit of people with your story and the services that you're talking about. And just, I think overall, the way that you just normalize seeking these resources out and you take away the stigma and the shame about it. And I think that's so important. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about or anything that you wanted to add that we didn't get around to covering?
I think the biggest thing is to not do it alone. There are great veteran service officers. There's a lot of recommendations for reputable veteran service officers. Ask literally if it's a coffee chat, if it's you want to start a business, there's so many great things out here. If you need a certification, literally you can say, hey, this is what I want to do. Can somebody point me in the right direction, right? It might be no mentor, to have a mentor. It's okay. We don't have to do this alone. There are a community, but right, you can't wait for the community to come to you. You have to ask, you have to be willing to put the work in. You have to be willing to follow up with people and know that the people you ask are people who who are real people who have their own lives, their own things
Exactly.
going on. So if your message slips through the crack, no,
It's
it
not
is not
personal.
something on purpose. To know that, hey, maybe somebody might be dealing with something that they don't put on social media, because we don't put everything on social
Nope.
media. To know that, hey, maybe they may be dealing with something this week. So give people grace. You know, follow up, backtrack. But the biggest thing I would say to start is just to start. And say, hey, I'm here. I'm here to learn, be humble to learn, and to say, hey, I want to grow forward and pass on the resources and services.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. It's so true. And I always say to people when it comes to seeking help is be willing to always meet people halfway. In other words, you come to the table with your work and the effort that you have expended to try to figure it out yourself. And then people will jump to meet you halfway. But you have to do the work. You have to put yourself out there. You have to try your best to get those resources and to figure it out for yourself. And then once you've been able to do that, and you just need a little bit of guidance and encouragement or push a certain way, well, that's great. But do it on your own end first. At least that's what I try to do as best I can. Is I try my best to not involve people at first if I can figure it out, and then I get to a place where I'm like, I don't know what more to do. This happened today with me trying to adjust some things with my retirement. It was just I had no idea where to go with this, and luckily some people came in and helped. But thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, Amber. I'm going to go full screen and do my closeout of the call as I always do. And I will meet you backstage to say goodbye. But thank you so much for being a guest on the
Sounds good.
Stories of Service podcast.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Another wonderful show. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. Next week, I'm going to have a panel. I haven't done a panel show in quite a while where I will be bringing you 3 amazing advocates in the areas of sexual prevention, sexual trauma. It's definitely going to be a heavier episode, but an important one. And I can't wait to tell you guys more about it. But in the meantime, as I always say, and as I always close out these calls, please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye bye now.